With the allocation features of the Universal Allocation, you can manage and perform various overhead allocation and distribution tasks for different allocation contexts, like cost centers for the overhead cost accountant, profit centers for the GL accountant, or top-down distribution for the sales accountant. You periodically allocate amounts and quantities from sending objects to receiving objects. In this demo, we'll dive into cost center allocation, which takes values from one or more cost centers and distributes them on to other cost centers or other objects. To use cost center allocation, you first create the master record, which is a cycle. Inside the cycle, you create various definitions called segments. In each segment, you define which centers send which values to which receivers based on which quantities or other amounts, and based on which rule governs this distribution. After defining your master record, your cycle, you execute a periodic cycle run for your cycles, which performs the actual distribution of values from the senders to the receivers. As an overhead cost accountant, I want to distribute values from my bucket cost center that gathers the telephone and communications expenses for the month, and I want to send them on to the actual cost centers from which the cost is generated. So I look at a report and see what's been posted this month in my cost center. I enter the parameters that are required for the report, selecting actual values in my company code. The account I'm interested in is the telephone and telecommunications expenses. And to run the report, I select OK. And here you can see the values. They're posted on that other income and expense cost center in the amount of €1,000. You can click on the SAP logo to return to your Launchpad. Now we need to define our master data, that is, the cycle for our allocation. We go to Master Data, open the Manage Allocations app, and create a new cycle. We give the allocation cycle a technical name and a description, and enter the company code and the leading ledger for the values. With a distribution allocation type, we use the original cost account for the allocation. With the overhead allocation, we can use a secondary cost account. It's valid from the beginning of the year for the actual values and remains valid until the end of the current year. Usually, these are maintained annually at the end of the previous year for the next year. Let's create. And then within the definition, I have to create my segments to define each of these senders and receivers. In the segment section, I select Add and name my segment. I select the sender rule, which will be posted amount, that is, anything posted. The receiver rule is fixed percentages, that is, I'll just use percentages for cost centers. I define the senders. The single account is my telecommunications expenses account. And my cost center in this case is also a single cost center, which I just added. And then I define my receivers. You can add a cost center or a WBS element as a potential receiver. When you select cost center, a single line opens. And here you can also select a cost center group. I'll use my operations cost center group. Once you select your group, you go to your receiver basis. Here I have all the cost centers within the group, and I can define my percentages. They have to add up to 100% so that the total value is taken care of. And now I save. You can check your cycles for any errors. And if everything checks out, you can just execute it directly from here. You can do a test run or an actual run. I'll just go ahead and do an actual run. I'll name the run 09. My journal entry type is CO, and the fiscal period is also 09. This is because I only want the values for this current period to be allocated. I select OK, and I get the message letting me know that the run was triggered successfully. Let's display the completed runs. Here we can see my run with the run name 09 and the status completed. I can select this line to see the senders. I select Receivers and see the 3 receivers. And under Messages, I can see the document that was generated. Let's go back to our report and see what data we now see after the allocation run. I fill in the same parameters as before, and you can see that the €1,000 from here has been distributed onto the 3 cost centers that I had selected and in the percentages that I had maintained. And that's how you use universal allocations to perform a cost center allocation.